Hello and welcome to the Volt Show. I'm James Hong, one of the hosts, and here with me is,
Tad Park.
and let's get on with it. We at this show talk about various disruptors and investments we can make in these companies that's bringing up a wild future ahead of us, right? And so today we wanted to discuss a
Square.
very interesting. All right, thanks.
I'm just so excited to talk about it.
Yeah, so let's talk about Square. Square, give us a brief introduction of Square, Tad. Because
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, Square was founded by Jack Dorsey, and Jack Dorsey is also the CEO of Twitter. I think that what's very interesting is that people were just wondering, okay, can he lead two multi-billion-dollar companies at the same time? But apparently he can, and this is kind of typical. It's like there's no other choice that they can do. Like they need such an innovative visionary to lead these companies, and they couldn't do anything except share the CEO.
And
Basically,
that's one of the main points of how we identify some of these disruptors, right? It's not just about what the company is doing, it's the leadership behind the companies that drive innovation and change.
yeah, totally. We saw this recently. Everyone was excited about Nikola and all that stuff, but I mean, Nikola was a total fraud, and it was very clear that they knew nothing about innovation and engineering. And you can tell because the leader of Nikola just jumped ship. Why would you jump ship if you think that your company is going to 10x? Why would you jump ship and sell all your shares as the ship is sinking? Like they would only do that if they knew and they didn't believe that their company was innovative at all. But you see the actual visionary founders, they go through thick and thin. You see Elon Musk go through like the hardest times of Tesla's history. And because they know that these are going to be world-changing companies, so it's huge that Elon Musk stuck it through, Jack Dorsey stuck it through, and that they're still at the helm shows that they think that there's going to be further growth ahead.
And it's not that they just believe the company has the right vision. They have the right vision. They're leading the vision. They envision a future of autonomous cars and integrated finance and all these things, right? Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, totally. This is not just a cookie cutter CEO that you just drop in and say, "Oh, do your CEO thing." It's a vision that you can't just hire. This is someone where like they founded it, it was their baby. They are still living out their vision, and that's super important.
So let's talk about that. What is Square's vision? What is Jack Dorsey doing with Square that we're so bullish about?
Yeah, I think normally people just think that Square is like a payment system that helps you buy your coffee and everything, but it's way more than that. Like if you see that they have a huge ecosystem where they do payroll, and they do the payments with the Cash App. They have all these different systems all in like a financial ecosystem. So the vision that I think is happening here is it's basically a revolutionary view on fintech and the finance world. So before, everything was just like one way. You go to the bank, and then you withdraw cash, and then you spend cash and that kind of thing. But if you're in a fully like digital world, you can actually do a lot more things. Like you can actually purchase things. Businesses can know like what people are purchasing a lot easier. There's a lot more data. Like customers get a better experience because they actually get the products that they want and everything.
Yeah, that's right. It's all fully integrated, so your finance department knows exactly what's coming in right when it happens, instead of having to get a report
Yeah.
days later.
Yeah, exactly. And you can maybe get insights that other people may not even know. So for example, you may not know why there's a lot of water sales at a certain time. Like or you may not even know. So you open your store at 12 o'clock, but actually, what if there's tons of water sales that could happen at 11 o'clock because there's a marathon that happens at the time, but you had no idea, right? But what the advantage of Square is that they can tell you, and they can say, hey, all the other stores around you, if you just opened 1 hour earlier, you would make like half your sales all in 1 hour. And you can't get that kind of information on unless, there was AI and all this, like this digitization of the transactions.
Yeah,
right?
so let's talk about that, the data stuff, that because I think that's really, really, really key. Because now, as a Square user, if you're on the Square platform, not only do you get data about your sales, Square can make insights using other people's like-minded businesses around the area and see trends and stuff like that, and give you some insights. That's crucial. But a major thing that we always talk about is data. How important data is. Data is like the gold of the 21st century, right? And that's going to make driving changes, whether it's for autonomous driving or for fintech. And what is it so crazy about Square's data that you think is revolutionary, and the way that they're doing things that's completely different from every other transaction company?
Well, they are in the new system. Like they know that data is the new gold, and they are acting that way. So like the types of data that they collect, all that stuff, it's the right type of data, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you look at a credit card transaction, I mean, why is it after all these decades, they have definitely a lot of resources to figure it out. Why is it still confusing when we look at our bank statements? Like, what did we buy? Like, what's going on? What's this random string of letters and stuff? And we have to call in, and that frustration. Why are we still experiencing that? If it was that easy to do from a tech point of view, why are we experiencing that kind of confusion and frustration if the credit card companies have the tech to do that? But if you look at Square, I mean, you buy something, you get emailed a receipt, you know exactly what happened. And then the people who have the Square terminals, they know exactly what happened too. They know exactly the breakdown of that transaction, who bought what, why people buy certain things at certain times. All that data is available.
Yeah, and multiple data points instead of just, here's a transaction that happened, here's a vendor, here's a random category that someone labeled for some reason in that credit card company.
Yeah.
I've had to deal with that. I remember back a few years ago, I used Mint and stuff, and the categories were like so off, right?
Yeah.
I was like, what transaction is this?
Yeah.
And everyone had dealt with that, but with all this data stuff, and let's talk about that, because, hey, someone could say, like, Visa could easily do that. They could start getting that data, no problem. But what is it about these companies that started with the platform first, with the vision behind it, that they're going to be leaps and bounds faster than these legacy companies?
Yeah. So you and I, we both come from software, and when we work, and we have worked in San Francisco in software, and you see this over and over. Basically, you can have a legacy organization, but that legacy organization has all these departments that were based in the pre-software world, right? So what if you have like a 1,000 people, but 300 of them are the ones who manually reconcile, that there's an issue with this transaction, or they have to support old stuff, like an old machine that only accepts text, but then that text is not the right text to, the right type of data for you to have all these new applications and stuff. So because you have all these like income flow and customers and that kind of thing, you can't just cut off like huge portions of your business. You still have to address all that stuff. And that's why the legacy companies have a hard time like keeping up or catching up, because they have to support those areas of their business.
Yeah, and something that people don't realize is that, I mean, would you rather have a software company who's really good at software learn how to do finance, or would you rather have a finance company learn how to do software? Right.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen how that turns out. It usually doesn't turn out.
I mean, I still go to my bank website and it's horrible. It's like it's just not a good experience. So coming with the best talent already, software engineers, right?
Yeah.
Like Square they can compete for those software resources. And if you're a software engineer, you want to work at somewhere like Square, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to work at Visa. You don't want to work at U.S. Bank or Bank of America.
Yeah.
Because they're not at the leading edge of tech. And usually there's a ton of bureaucracy. And so there's greater velocity for Square. They have already the right platform. They have the engineers. They have the vision. And that's why we're so bullish, right? There's just so many things going for them.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point. It's actually not a dime a dozen to get an engineer. like a software engineer, it's actually very, very competitive. And like, you know, we get like recruiting emails all the time. People trying to recruit us and trying to recruit other people. And it really matters who has the talent pool and, where people want to work. Because what actually happens with the code base is that you can have someone who's a really good software engineer, and that one person can have the impact of, 10 like lesser engineers. Mm-hmm. So like the lesser engineers might lesser in skill and like, experience and that kind of thing. So then they might add like 100,000 lines of code, but when you try to change it, it's like really hard to change. You're trying to put in an innovative feature, but you can't because they didn't think of that feature in advance. Mm-hmm. And then the best engineers, it's like it's a lot less code, but you need to change it. They'll change it on a dime, and you can actually innovate and change way faster. That's why companies are willing to pay that person, like $300,000 a year, versus you could get like 5 engineers for that price. But here, like it's at a premium. So it matters who works for you and who wants to work at your company.
Yeah. And these people, because they get to do like leading edge tech stuff, they're more likely to join your company like Square, and put into work and have excitement for the job. Whereas if you go to a legacy company, you're working on legacy software, you're fixing bugs, you're trying to clean up stuff, and nobody wants to do that work.
Yeah,
right? Who wants to do that? I hate doing that.
It's in all these like outdated languages. That these languages software languages are gonna die off. Mm-hmm. There's no like
support and
there's no career progression and stuff. So
there's stability. I mean, you're gonna have a job because you have to keep up that legacy framework somehow, right?
Yeah,
it's just not going to be the leading edge and making change, the future that we want to see. Right?
Yeah,
with the integrated finance and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that. What's at the next frontier? Another reason why we're bullish on Square is because you and I were also pretty bullish on cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
And Square is one of those big companies that have somewhat embraced it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about what's Square doing with particularly Bitcoin. Jack Dorsey said Bitcoin is for everyone. And how does that infiltrate into every part of life, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's hosting that B word conference next month, and he's a huge proponent of Bitcoin. And I think what Bitcoin represents is it's basically freedom. Like it gets rid of the concept of counterparty risk. Basically, why do other people have to custody our funds? Like what if it could truly be a democratized, decentralized system where you don't have to trust any particular person or any particular bank.
Hold your money.
Yeah, to hold our money. And in our history, if you look at Great Depression, all this stuff, everyone's running for the banks. Like, we don't have to live in that kind of world where there's a system where a very few number of people can basically totally mess you up. It can be completely trustless, completely decentralized, completely secure, and that right now is increasingly looking like Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I guess people don't really think about that, this concept of store of value, right? And that comes up a lot. But back then, you have your money, you want to keep it safe. How do you keep it safe, right?
Yeah,
you could give it to the bank. Back in the days, that bank could have been robbed, right?
Yeah,
and so there's this idea of storing wealth, and as the world progresses, then you're going to want to store that value in the most leading technological safe way possible, right? And that's pretty much Bitcoin.
Yeah, but some people say that, well, isn't it just a letter or like a number in a computer system? Like, isn't that nothing? Like, why? What kind of value is in Bitcoin? Like, what? So, what's your answer to that, James? Like, what?
Well, I think digital world is just so crazy, and going forward, it's more of our lives are going to be on the digital realm. And even right now, if you think about it, like your transaction, when you have like $1,000 in the bank, right? That's not like, that's somewhat digital too, right? All you see is a number. So we've already kind of progressed to how we view things and how we understand things to be digitalized, right?
Yeah.
And obviously you can transfer that into real value, right? real cash. But that's the part where I think liquidity of Bitcoin is pretty amazing. Right now, I think, they did that thing. Tesla did that experiment to check the liquidity of Bitcoin, and they were able to validate it. And being able to liquidate something into an actual thing is real. And Bitcoin, there exists something like that, right?
Yeah.
People place value on it, and that's ultimately the important thing, right?
Yeah.
Is it nothing? Is it just X's and O's or whatever, ones and zeros? Well, yeah, in theory, but whatever people place value on, that has value, right?
Yeah.
And I think Bitcoin has found that. People realize that there's value to this, and there is, because it's limited. It's limited. It's a fixed supply. You can never increase it.
Yeah.
Right. And so as more people want to digitalize their wealth, it's going to get more value.
Yeah.
That's just my answer. I mean, obviously, there's more to it than that, but we don't have all the time to go into the nitty gritty of.
Well, it's true. I mean, even with fiat currency like the U.S. dollar, it's by fiat, and fiat means by faith, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not actually backed by gold. It used to be backed by gold, but essentially that too is just by faith, that we just say that it has value because we say that it has value. So, but there's the trust of billions of people around the world that says, hey, the US dollar has value. Mm-hmm. And increasingly so, people are saying, hey, there is a lot of value to have something that doesn't have counterparty risk, a completely decentralized, almost unhackable system. Mm-hmm. As more and more miners come online, and it's pretty much unhackable to attack this store of value, it becomes more and more valuable.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. The Bitcoin's value is derived by the market, right, and not by some other outside source. And I think that's what makes it very interesting to me, and I think that's what makes it very valuable to me, that it's decentralized by any outside forces, and it's only the users of Bitcoin that determine its value.
Yeah. And coming back to Square, like Jack Dorsey is super bullish about Bitcoin. You can actually buy Bitcoin within the Cash App, which is a Square app. Mm-hmm. And he's actually showing people, hey, you can transact between friends and different people with Bitcoin itself. Mm-hmm. And he's creating the infrastructure to actually allow for that, a completely non-custodied solution to transact within pure Bitcoin between two people. So he's actually, again, on the leading edge. He was on the leading edge of innovation with Twitter, leading edge of innovation with Square. Again, he's continuing to innovate in the finance space by really pushing forward Bitcoin.
Yeah, and embracing Bitcoin. And right now, I think a lot of people have mentioned in the past, like, how Bitcoin is not usable, right? And Square, I feel like, is going to bridge the gap between Bitcoin's seemingly uselessness in real-world transactions and the global embrace of it and the popular embrace of it, right? So people actually starting to embrace Bitcoin and using it. Tesla is starting to accept Bitcoin, but with Square, what's cool thing is, because it's all in their platform, like immediately almost, they could have the power to allow any of their platform users that uses the Square terminal to start taking Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Or any cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and they have that, like, from the get-go. They could just enable it at any time, and of all companies, like, they definitely can accept that. Now imagine a legacy company, how difficult it's going to be for them to change all their code to suddenly introduce a currency that's never existed before. But for a company like Square, they can easily accept that, and that's why they can move faster and innovate faster than other companies.
Yeah, and everybody's really excited about Bitcoin. I mean, this past year, it's been crazy, right? The adoption of Bitcoin and all these things. And so you're like, hey, who's going to be able to do it fast? Who's going to be able to really push forward? We believe it's Square.
Yeah.
And they're going to do an amazing thing to kind of bring about some kind of a Bitcoin revolution in the amongst the population, amongst the people, the normal people.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's Bitcoin for the people. It's the people's currency.
So, well, that was really fun talking about all that stuff about Square and their bull case and all the things that we're excited about. But that's all the time we have for today. If you're excited to hear more about our thoughts on other companies and even more about Square and Bitcoin and all these things, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and wait for more content. We're excited to be able to do the show. Thanks for being on the show, Ted.
Yeah, until next time.
See ya.